Okay, so you know how sometimes, like, even if you're pretty good at math, you hit a word problem and it's like suddenly your brain just freezes up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we've all had that experience at some point, right? Whether it's like trying to figure out a recipe or maybe like decoding some statistic in the news. It's like word problems, they just have this way of making even like basic arithmetic feel way harder.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so frustrating because it can make you feel like you're bad at math when maybe you're really not, you know?
Right. It's like it's not the numbers themselves, it's something else that's tripping us up.
Exactly. And that's actually what we're going to dig into today in this deep dive. We've got this super interesting review of a bunch of behavioral studies about word problems, and they really get into like the nitty-gritty of like what's going on in our brains when we try to solve them.
Yeah, it's like a behind the scenes look at all the cognitive and linguistic factors that are kind of secretly at play.
Yeah, so we're going to break down the key findings of this research for you, and hopefully help you understand like why these problems can be so tricky, and maybe even like rethink how you approach them in the future.
Right, because maybe there are strategies we can learn that actually like target the real root of the struggle.
Exactly. So to kick things off, one of the first things this review points out is that like the core challenge with word problems is really about translation.
Yeah, like it's taking that word problem, that paragraph of text and turning it into like a proper math equation.
Right, because it's not just about knowing how to add or subtract or whatever. It's about figuring out what the problem's even asking you to do in the first place.
Exactly. And that first step, that translation from like the linguistic format to the symbolic math format, that's where a lot of people get stuck.
It's like deciphering the code before you could even start using your math skills.
Exactly. And, this brings us to a really crucial point that the research emphasizes, which is the link between reading comprehension skills and success with word problems.
It's like you have to be able to understand the story before you can figure out the math problem hidden within it.
Exactly. And it's not just a helpful thing, it's often like a prerequisite for even setting up the math correctly.
So even if you're a whiz at calculations, if you can't fully grasp what the problem is saying, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, it's this linguistic aspect that really adds a whole other layer of complexity that you just don't get with like pure number
Right.
problems.
It's not just about the numbers anymore. It's about understanding the language and the context and all of that.
And, all that extra stuff, it increases what's called cognitive load, which is basically like how much mental effort your brain has to use.
It's like your brain is juggling a bunch of things at once,
Yeah.
right? It's trying to make sense of the words and then also do the math, and it can easily get overloaded.
Exactly. And the review gets into some specific linguistic factors that can really ramp up that cognitive load and make word problems even more confusing.
So it's like certain things about the way the problem is written can make it harder to understand and solve.
Precisely so. Like one of the most basic things is vocabulary if there are words in the problem that you don't know.
Well,
Well, it's going to be tough to figure out what's going on.
yeah, that's obvious, right? If you don't know what a word means, you can't really understand the scenario they're describing.
And then another thing is sentence structure. So, like, if the sentences are really long and complex with lots of clauses and stuff, it can be super hard to extract the information you need.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling. Sometimes I have to read a word problem like 3 times just to untangle the sentence before I can even think about the math.
Right? It's like a grammar puzzle on top of a math puzzle.
Exactly. And then there are these little words that seem so simple but can actually trip you up big time. Things like more than, less than, fewer than.
Yeah, those are called relational terms, and they're super important because they define like the relationship between the different quantities in the problem.
And if you misinterpret one of those little words, it can totally change the math you need to do.
You could end up adding when you should be subtracting or something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. It's
Um,
crazy how much power those tiny words have.
they're like the hidden operators of word problems.
So basically, the language itself can be a major obstacle, even before you get to the math part.
Yeah, the words are not just like a neutral container for the math. They really shape how you approach the whole problem.
And on top of that, the review also talks about how all this language stuff is connected to some pretty important cognitive processes.
Right. So it's not just about understanding the words, it's about how your brain then processes that information and uses it to solve the problem.
So, like, what's actually happening in our heads when we're trying to work through one of these things?
Well, the review highlights two key cognitive processes that are super important here, and those are working memory and inhibitory control.
Okay, so let's start with working memory. What exactly is that?
So, working memory is kind of like your brain's mental scratch pad. It's the ability to hold and manipulate information in your mind for a short period of time.
It's like the RAM of your brain.
Exactly, and it's essential for all sorts of tasks, but especially for word problems.
So how does it work with these problems specifically?
Well, think about it. You have to read the problem, remember the key numbers, figure out how they're related to each other, and then do the calculations, all while keeping track of what you're doing.
Yeah, it's like a mental juggling act.
Exactly. And all of that information has to be actively held in your working memory.
So if the problem is really long or complicated, it's easy to see how your working memory could get overloaded.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the research suggests. The more complex the language, the more strain it puts on your working memory.
So if your brain is busy just trying to understand the words, it has less capacity left over to actually solve the problem.
Precisely. And that's why sometimes simplifying the language of a word problem can make it feel so much easier.
It's like freeing up space in your mental RAM.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's working memory. Now, let's talk about inhibitory control.
Okay, so inhibitory control, that sounds kind of like self-control, right? Like being able to resist distractions and stuff.
Yeah, it's the ability to ignore irrelevant information and suppress impulsive responses.
So how does that apply to word problems?
Well, word problems often contain like extra details, things that aren't actually needed to solve the problem.
It's like they're trying to trick you.
Right. And your inhibitory control helps you filter out those distractions and focus on the important stuff.
So if you see a bunch of numbers in the problem, you don't just automatically try to use all of them. You have to use your inhibitory control to pick out the relevant ones.
Exactly. And it's not just about ignoring extra information. It's also about suppressing like pre-existing knowledge or habits that might not apply to this specific problem.
So like if you're used to solving a certain type of problem in a particular way, but this problem requires a different approach, your inhibitory control helps you like switch gears and adapt.
Yeah, it's about being flexible and not getting stuck in your old ways.
So basically, inhibitory control helps you stay focused and avoid getting sidetracked by irrelevant stuff or falling back on habits that don't work in this situation.
Precisely, it's a crucial skill for navigating the complexities of word problems.
So we've got this whole interplay of language comprehension, working memory, and inhibitory control, all contributing to how well we can solve these things.
And the review kind of concludes by saying that, maybe we need to rethink how we teach and learn word problem-solving skills.
Because it's not just about drilling math facts, it's about all these other skills, too.
Exactly. And maybe traditional approaches that focus mainly on calculation aren't really addressing the whole picture.
So it's like we need to be more aware of the language aspects and the cognitive demands involved.
Yeah, and maybe there are more effective strategies that we could be teaching and using.
So to sum up, it's not just about being good or bad at math. It's about this complex combination of factors.
Word problems really give us a glimpse into how all these different parts of our brains work together.
It's like a mini cognitive workout every time you face one of these problems.
So for all of you listening out there, the next time you encounter a word problem, take a moment to think about what we've talked about today.
Maybe try breaking down the language really carefully before you jump into the math.
Pay attention to those tricky relational terms. Make sure you're focusing on the relevant information, and don't be afraid to try a new approach if your old one isn't working.
Be mindful of your mental resources, and don't let those words overwhelm your working memory.
And remember, struggling with word problems doesn't mean you're bad at math. It just means you're human.
It's a challenge that we all face, and hopefully by understanding these underlying factors, we can approach these problems with a little more confidence and a lot less frustration.
And who knows, maybe we can even start to enjoy the challenge a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe those word problems aren't so scary after all once you understand what's really going on.
They're just a little puzzle for your brain to solve.
Exactly. So good luck out there with all your future word problem adventures.
And thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.